The next wave of destruction has finally arrived. Will Naofumi and his little Tanuki Loli be able to save the day? Let's find out. Greetings, my friends. It's time to take a look at another episode of The Rising of the Shield Hero, and this is a very tense episode as Naofumi and Raphtalia are going to do battle against an evil wave of enemies that want to destroy a fantasy world. This is our very first glimpses into seeing what, like, the enemies of the series are going to be like, and they basically just come across as, like, an evil, almost zombie-like horde consisting of everything from monsters to giant insects to all sorts of weird, creepy, freaky ghouls and ghosts. In this episode right here was incredibly satisfying as we finally got to see Naofumi and Raphtalia in action together, and they are pretty fantastic. I especially love the fact that Raphtalia has gone through a massive transformation, originally being a little girl and now being a much older teenager who's incredibly more competent in battle. To top it all off, we also got to see the grand return of the three other heroes from the series, and surprise, surprise, they're still all douchebags. First thing I want to say is that this episode was action-packed. It was the best action that I've seen from the series thus far, and the most well-animated. In particular, watching Naofumi and Raphtalia actually work together is great. There's a couple of sequences of watching them sort of back each other up, constantly like moving the camera, sweeping around this amazing battle scene of watching them defend, slash, stab, and shield. It is fantastic. I love it. And much like the actual citizens who are watching those two fight, my jaw was on the floor. I was incredibly surprised to see that in this short amount of time, they've become quite a competent pair. However, with this amazing action and excitement does come a lot of frustration, and a lot of that mostly comes from the side characters and, of course, the main army that works directly under the king in this series. There's a scene where they end up clearing out all of these monsters and saving a lot of citizens, when suddenly these soldiers just arrive and they start just lobbying all of these big attacks towards them in order to take out the rest of the monsters, knowing that Naofumi and Raphtalia are still on the battlefield. If they get hurt, it doesn't mean jack shit to them. It shows that they still do not care about these characters or their well-being, despite the fact that this dude literally is one of the four heroes that's supposed to save this world. Their overall hatred is still allowing them to do this, and honestly, it was just a moment that made me want to kick these dudes directly in the balls. However, karma ends up being something of a bitch for some of these soldiers when some of them decide to leave and join the other heroes, while some of them are actually impressed by the actual bravery of Naofumi and Raphtalia, and they decide to stay behind and help them in battle, and this ends up gaining them the respect of all of the citizens. It's a really great, heartwarming moment, and even though he is starting to gain a little bit more of the respect of these people, Naofumi is still not holding back at all. He's still being kind of vindictive towards all of them, and still, I honestly cannot blame him at this moment. But still, I do love that Raphtalia is actually starting to bring out more of his pleasant personality as the series goes on. Hell, he actually smiled in this episode. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the short appearance of the three other heroes in this episode who are now donning really cool armor, and they have big, super flashy attacks working together to fight monsters, but still they're the same douchey characters as they were before, and even the return of Mine, the girl who completely screwed over Naofumi in this episode, God, just seeing her on screen every moment just makes my head want to explode. I really hope that bitch gets her comeuppance soon. So what's the rundown on this episode of The Rising of the Hero Shield? A very simple but very fun episode showing us the raw destruction of the waves of power in this episode. It shows that we're going to see a lot of really unique and nutty battles, and I'm sure it's just going to intensify as time goes on. Visually, atmospherically speaking, this was a cool episode too. I especially love that when the wave began, the sky itself turns blood red. There's these giant swirling pools of energy where all of these monsters just pour out from. It does a great job of like displaying this as like an almost apocalyptic battle that if they lose, this could potentially be the end of their world. It did a great job of actually raising the stakes. I also like that both Raphtalia and Naofumi have a more distinctive look to them, with Raphtalia being a little older and having a different costume and of course being a lot more confident, but even Naofumi has his very own personalized armor now, which I have to admit does look pretty freaking cool, and watching them work together was definitely, I think, the best part about this episode right here. If you were just waiting for some cool, awesome fantasy action, then this was certainly the episode that worked right here, but I think the emotional impact of the episode truly hit home with all of the citizens actually appreciating what they're doing, despite the fact that everyone's constantly shitting on them. So let's go ahead and put a bow on this episode. I thought that this was a very satisfying and very fun and intense episode to watch, which was a great mixture of emotions and watching two characters display some amazing teamwork. The production value wasn't half bad either. This was probably my favorite episode of the series thus far, although to really appreciate it, you do have to watch the series from the beginning, and I do implore those who've decided to not watch the show, give it a chance. It seems kind of stock at first, but honestly, I think it's doing some pretty good things with its characters. So I'm gonna give this episode right here a 4 out of 5. Another solid episode, which does have a few flaws in some moments, but for the most part, just like the rest of the series, it's surprising and just plain fun to watch. I'd love to get all of your thoughts about the episode if any of you guys did watch it. Tell me what you thought about it in the comment section below, and what you hope to see from the rest of the Rising of the Shield Hero. Thank you all for watching this review. I'll see you all next time, and as always, stay down now, baby.